Why is Bernie meeting with Walmart shareholders?
And how will it affect how we as a nation value the working class?
Let's get skeptical.
The issue we're talking about today is, I think, an issue that deals with the great economic crisis in America today. And that is, despite low unemployment, we end up having tens of millions of Americans working at wages that are just so low.
One of the main points that we're talking about when it comes to Bernie Sanders and why he is not only the best candidate for this country, but one of the people who has advocated for us for so long, and someone who's, I think, the most deserving of even being, like, just being the Democratic candidate. I think he's deserving of that, is because he has advocated for so long for everyone, right? For the everyday person. A prime example of that is his campaign in 2016 helped to shed a light on progressive policies and progressive incumbents and those who are in Congress or in the Senate that didn't have a spotlight on them as much before, right? People like Ro Khanna or AOC. We're seeing since that election, I think that we can agree that there has been a shift in the narrative of progressives being more in the limelight, like I'm saying, the spotlight being on them, and that's a great thing for people because they're seeing themselves be represented in a way that they weren't before, right? I feel like for so long, the corporations have run this show. They own us. We know they own us, and we haven't really questioned it as much as a country, as a nation. Individuals have, and we make jokes and we talk about corporations like Amazon and Wal-Mart being evil, but we don't really sit down and think about just how comprehensive the problem is and just how much we need to address this problem as soon as possible, right? So Bernie being that candidate, like we're saying, the reason why we think he's deserving is because he is advocating for people in a way that you don't see. Prime example of that is the meeting that he's going to be having, or the invitation he received, rather, to serve on the board and to talk with the shareholders for Walmart, addressing a very real problem. So the problem is, I don't think we, like I said, understand the extent of that damage that they're doing to this country, and how little they're giving to the people who work for them and the people who are supporting them, right? So some examples, some statistics to kind of help shed some more light on that in a way that I feel like we are ignoring is that Walmart made $514 billion in 2018 with $129 in gross profits.
$129 billion,
rather, sorry, in gross profits. That's insane, right? First and foremost, right? That number get so lost
it's an imaginary number.
It feels like an imaginary number, but at the same time, it isn't an imaginary number in the sense of, like, that's real money that they have. That's real funds that they have. That's real tangible resources that they have at their disposal that they're not using properly, right? They account for 1% or 1.5 million of the U.S. workforce, right? That's a huge deal in and of itself, in the sense of, like, 1% of this country works for Walmart. Right, 1% of this country relies on Walmart to support their families, to support themselves, to take care of everyday basic needs. And while Walmart used to be more prone to taking care of these individuals, right, by, like, an example being 80% of their workforce were full-time in 2005. 80% of their employees were getting full-time benefits, were getting full-time hours. That 20% that was part-time is now 50% of their employees. Walmart is finding ways to work the system in their favor, and that is by making all their employees part-time so they don't get those benefits, so they don't get as many hours, so that their pay is less and less and less. And the reason why they're able to get away with that is because they have used stuff like SNAP and public assistance to help compensate for the lack of pay that these people don't get.
Well, also,
right?
it's the justification that this job is not skilled.
Yeah.
Because this job is not skilled, these people should be punished. They shouldn't get a fair wage.
It doesn't have as high of a value.
They don't have as high of a value because anyone can do this job.
Sure.
When people are sick, they use FMLA. They're not using an actual sick day.
No,
they're not able to leave work.
Yes.
And you have someone like the CEO right now. I think he made, where's it at? Chief Executive Office Doug McMillon received $23.6 million in total compensation for the fiscal 2019. So by the end of this year, he's going to make $23.6 million. That is 1,076 times the median pay for a Walmart employee of $21,952.
Which is huge, right? That's one person making over 1,000 times more than the average employee, the median employee.
He works one day and he makes what a Walmart employee would make in 3 years.
Yes. In one day, he makes that amount of money, right? So, and that's why Bernie being on the board and meeting with these shareholders is so important, right? Having 50% of people be part-time means that they're getting less than that. I mean, if you look at you just look at the median pay, and that just speaks for itself, right? Only getting paid around $20,000 a year at this time, with the cost of living as it is in 2019, that's insanely low, right? And like you were saying before, people aren't being valued as people. They're not being the human life, the average human life, and it's something that I feel like Bernie talks about a lot in his rallies and discusses a lot. And not just Bernie. Like I said, there are plenty of progressive candidates, and I want to make sure we give them credit as often and as frequently as we can. But because because he has a story from the 2016 campaign, and because he's so prolific, he's one of the most prominent people right now. I feel like when it comes to the candidate, he's one of the most popular choices, and that's mostly because like name recognition and all those different things. But what he's standing for is making sure that human life has a value that is beyond just a cog in a machine. And places like Walmart, places like Amazon treat these employees like cogs in the machine. They come into an area, they come into a town, they come into a city, and they just prey on those people by giving them a job, which is great, but paying them barely enough to get by, and not even enough to do that because they have to go to places like, they have to use Link. They need subsidized housing from the government. They need these different things. They're using... And I think that's one of big, speaking back again to the stigma that we were talking about before, that I was talking about before, when it comes to people who use these benefits, to people who are reliant on food stamps or on subsidized housing. Family members, I have family members that rely on these things, right? And that stigma that we place on them when we say that you're less valuable of a person because you have to rely on the government to do these things. And it's not everybody, of course. Obviously, there are people. I think that the left end of the political spectrum is more lenient and more forgiving of these things and understanding, right? Because they understand that circumstances change. But the problem is, the left is understanding of the fact that, okay, you have this big family, and you didn't have the access to the education. You couldn't afford the education that you wanted to get, or
maybe you just weren't as educated.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a simple fact of life. We're all getting cards in life, and we have to do what we can do with them.
Absolutely.
So if someone is willing to work 40 hours a week, they should be able to eat.
They should.
They should.
Exactly.
I want there to be a method for someone to get it, because personally, my beef, I personally want the welfare state to go away completely. Sure. But the only way to get the welfare state to go away is to make some kind of system where we as workers have more rights.
Yes.
So the welfare state has created this system that if you make a certain amount of dollar value, you don't want extra hours at work. You don't want to work overtime.
No, you don't want to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs to make up for the fact that you don't have
Because if
money.
you do, you'll lose your welfare.
Sure.
And now you're starving because of that. Or you'll not make enough money. You'll make too much money, and you won't get food stamps.
Absolutely. It's this constant, terrible loop.
We have created, the Democratic Party has honestly created a system that doesn't fix the issue. It just lets the government get involved and give funds, rather than letting a system be in place that, we can abolish this welfare system and actually give people incentive to go work.
Sure. Absolutely.
Why would someone who's on welfare go to college whenever everything's said and done? They're risking the fact that they could be giving up their food stamps. There's that natural survival instinct kicks in.
I need to survive. They're much more limited. I mean, when you have places that are on the coast, or when you have places that are far more populated, cities that have plenty of options, right? You can go to so many different businesses and not exploit that, but use that to your advantage, right? You have access to more farmers markets for your vegetables and stuff like that. Things that you could afford, or that are more affordable, or not necessarily more affordable, but less exploitative of the people, the community itself, right? Whereas in rural communities in the Midwest, obviously we have a big problem with this area, or these, like the Midwest, being ignored completely, right? Like there's so much of a focus.
Trump won.
Yeah, it's why Trump. It's why Trump won. It's why Hillary lost, right? She didn't focus on those the Midwest. She didn't focus on those states that she needed to turn and convince that the Democratic Party was the way to go, right? Yes. People that don't believe in this party, people that don't believe in that, and that speaks to a larger problem too, right? That speaks to these companies have been allowed to get away with what they've been getting away with for so long under both presidents who were on the right and presidents who were on the left, right? These companies have been able to use people like Barack Obama, right? They've been able to use people like, George. We expect these things from people like George W. Bush and Donald Trump. We expect Donald Trump to try to to kind of let Walmart go on the sly and say, hey, you do your thing. I mean, if you got to take advantage of people, you got to take advantage of people. That's just the way it works, right?
Well, even not Barack Obama. Hillary Clinton sat on the Walmart board back in the day.
Absolutely.
So we have someone who wasn't for workers.
No.
and she nominated someone like Tim Kaine,
Sure.
who is anti-union also.
Sure.
We in the Midwest had no reason to vote for Hillary.
No.
You know, the lack of worker support from that. And the thing about it is, Donald Trump did a good job at one thing. He blamed somebody for the problem. You know, he blamed immigrants.
Sure.
But there has to be a reason why we're suffering. There has to be a reason for why wages are bad.
Absolutely.
So
let's talk about this for a second. It's not just people who are young and have these big families and need help to support that family. It's people who go to college as well. I mean, it's college graduates. I mean, you think about, for the most part, people who get their bachelor's degrees, right? If that degree is not useless completely, right, and you're kind of just dumped into the world and you have to figure things out for yourself.
Business degrees. I mean, we're at a severe issue with business degrees right now.
What do you mean?
A ton amount of people in our age bracket were told that if we went to school for business,
absolutely,
that if we went to school for business, we would have a job, because these retail jobs were booming, and we were in hope that these jobs would increase their wages.
Sure.
But that hasn't occurred.
No.
We've had a stagnation of wages overall, and now we don't need business degrees as much, even because the robots are coming. I mean, that's another conversation.
Automation is a huge thing. I mean, Walmart, I mean, that's
a whole nother bridge, but
for sure, that's a whole other topic that we could talk about in more detail at another time, because I feel like we could talk about that for forever, right? Really, in order to close this and kind of I mean, obviously this is a problem that's going to be ongoing, and obviously this is an issue that we will continue to talk about as these things progress, right? This is just one example of a person who we believe in standing up against a problem that we know that is very, like I said, not just comprehensive, but so deteriorating for the American people and so deteriorating for the working class, right?
Yes.
It's a prime example of the wealthy having all of this money, having all of these resources, having the ability to not only treat these people as people, but to help themselves in the process, right? To change what you're saying, to get rid of stuff like this welfare state and having to rely on things and making it seem like, well, in order for you to survive, you need to have this emergency hatch. You need to have this thing that helps you to get out of jail free, or kind of a situation, if that makes sense. Instead of making it that be the way that they provide these things, instead shifting the focus onto, hey, we're going to pay you a living wage. We're going to make sure that we take care of you. That people that want, like I said, people like companies like Walmart who employ so many people are actually going to be able to live lives that actually aren't a constant struggle.
I mean, this is going to sound like a silly analogy.
Sure.
But have you ever watched That 70s Show?
Sure, yeah.
Back in the old day, a lot of men had respectful jobs working retail jobs.
Absolutely.
They survived on their family.
Men, women,
and it's
anything.
a joke that Red Foreman paid for his whole family on that retail job that he had. But it's like, that. Why is it that we've walked away from that being a respectable job?
So there's an older couple that I'm friends with that I've spoken to on matters like this a couple of times, and one particular conversation really stuck out to me, and it's something that really speaks to what you're talking about. This country used to take care of people, and now they just don't take care of people because these corporations own our politicians, right? And we can talk about that. That's another topic that we need to talk about in more detail. But the main thing that they were talking about, and the story that this person shared with me, was that this man worked for Boeing for 25 years or longer, 25 plus years, and obviously Boeing is different than Walmart, but Boeing took care of their employees at that time whenever he was young, to the sense of like his insurance was super comprehensive and covered all kinds of different things. But one of the reasons why I want to focus on that, and one reason why I thought one of the main takeaways I had from that conversation was this man was diagnosed with cancer. This man had several surgeries that he had to get taken care of, right? And if he were employed by most of the companies that have employees today, his insurance would not cover anywhere near the cost that it would have taken to take care of the problems that he had. This man did from what they understood, the estimate was over $1 million worth of surgeries and healthcare that he needed to have taken care of, and his company took care of all of it. Right, Boeing took care of all of it because he was on one of those older plans, and it shows that over time, right, that they're not only these companies are taking care of these people less and less, they're taking away this insurance, right? It speaks to that, right? They're not being taken care of.
The first thing that happens in union negotiations with companies is they take away healthcare.
Yeah.
The first thing they want to start cutting at is the meat of the healthcare plan. So they'll tell the employee, "We're not going to take your wages away," but then they go, "Your insurance premium is going to go up, though."
Yep.
So it's like subtle, it's the boiled frog.
Oh yeah.
You know? But I want to finally go to this final thing with the bill is actually called the Stop Walmart Act. The bill would prohibit large employers from buying back stock unless they raise the minimum wage for all employees to at least $15 an hour, allowing them to earn up to 7 sick days, paid sick days, and limiting chiefs' compensation to 150 times the median employee
income, rather than the 1,076 times that we see with Doug.
1,066 at the time. Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders are both introducing this bill together.
Yes.
Okay. And the way I think that we should handle this should be a libertarian and progressive issue.
Sure.
That 1.6 billion is being taken from our tax system.
Absolutely.
And basically supplementing Walmart's
the income of their employees, supplementing the income that they don't have, right? That they're not getting paid.
On a progressive side, we should be advocating for workers in general.
Sure.
One of the arguments against paying someone $15 for Walmart, they're saying it's an unskilled job, so why don't we pay paramedic workers that first? So
but that speaks to a whole other issue.
That's a whole other issue. But here's the thing: if paramedic workers can go make more money at Walmart, the paramedic companies are now forced to increase their wages because I can just go get a job at Walmart for $15 an hour.
Yes.
Pay me what I want to get paid, or I'm taking my business somewhere else. That is the nature of capitalism.
Sure.
So
I think that So, we've spoken about this a lot. We've spoken about how we feel Bernie is doing something that is helping to bring back the value of a human life that we feel like we're losing or we're lacking rather in this country at this time. Something that we feel that can be done. These things there's a lot of heady topics here. There's a lot of things that we're talking about that seem grandiose and too big to handle on a scale that's individualistic, right? But that the thing is, one thing that I feel like we all lack in, and something that I've lacked in, right, is being able to call the people who are doing these things out, calling the people who are in power and saying, hey, this is something that I don't appreciate, right? People make jokes all the time about, hey, you need to call your local congressmember or your senator and talk to them about what's going on, right? They act as if that isn't going to have some sort of influence on what's going on, right? But that is something that I feel like we've vastly underestimated, because if enough of us get together and we talk about these things and we address these problems, we're going to make things happen, right? If Reddit can make Sonic the Hedgehog, if they can make the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog, rather, change the look of it just based off of their reaction to it online. Yes. If they can do something like that with so few people who supported that, who no one really cared, really, but the people who did care did something. Right, and no matter what people say, every little bit that you do can help. Yes. Every little bit, everything that you can say, every call that you can make, every person that you can talk to about this subject, right? That's one of the main things that we're trying to do with this whole thing, is we're trying to facilitate conversations between people who wouldn't normally talk to each other, because we all need to understand that there's a value to our lives that we're vastly underestimating. Yes. Right? So that's something that we're really focusing on with this. So summarizing this, Bernie Sanders speaking to Walmart and doing these things and sitting on this board is one step that we feel like is going toward bringing back that value. Yes. And why we support him so much as a candidate, and why we feel like Bernie Sanders is and should be the next president, right? He's the exact counter to what we've been having in the past for decades now. Yes. So for those of you who are out there and who want to do something, call your local senators, call these people, share this video with others, and show them the reality that we're living in, and help to make this, what seems like a fantasy that's far off because it doesn't necessarily affect you directly at that time, make it a real thing, and see that there are people out there that are truly suffering at the hands of corporations and at the hands of politicians who are paid off by those corporations. Yes.
Not just that, but people don't know the stat. The stat is, for every one person that calls, 10,000 people are upset. But people don't get involved. People see something angry in the news, and they just, I can't make a difference. Sure. I need to move on. It's mass action. And that's what we hope this is. We hope that this is a community of people on both the libertarian side and the progressive side that can come together and actually voice out that we are not okay with how things are.
We've been in an abusive relationship for a very long time. And it's time we actually looked at our abuser straight in the face and said, hey, enough is enough. Enough is enough. I have a value. I bring something to the table. Every single one of us does that.
My neighbor has a value also.
Sure.
Calling that out.
100%. So. With that, right, that's the whole point of this, is also to foster a community of people, right? So comment on this video, talk to each other, facilitate a conversation. If we've said something that you feel is out of line, or if we aren't fully, if there's more to this that we aren't expanding upon, let us know. Talk to us about these things, because the main point of this video isn't where we want to live. We want to live in the conversation. We want to live in the discussion. We want to live in focus on hearing voices and making sure those voices are heard even more, projecting those things, right? That's what all of this stuff, YouTube, social media, it's a wonderful tool that we can use to give that voice, right? So make sure, like I said, to share this video, like this video, comment on this video. We want this, the support that we get is going to try to, like I said, facilitate those voices even further, and to make sure that people that are skeptical about the world that are around them right now, and people that are curious about what's happening, or just straight up pissed off about what's happening, can have a place to go to, regardless of what their affiliation is, their party is, and actually have a discussion that is not only beneficial to all of us, but is
ending the tribalism.
Ending that tribalism and creating a community that's on the same page. Yeah, we're all human beings. We all have a life. We all have a value, and we need to focus on
what's
that.
Not being discussed is that Trump supporters and Bernie supporters, for the most part, agree on this issue.
Sure.
This is something that we both on this line, we both agree on it, but they want to make us seem that we don't.
Sure. We're far more alike than we like to let on.
Yeah. The reason Trump won is because there's a majority of the country that is upset.
Sure. Again, thank you for liking, thank you for sharing, thank you for commenting, thank you for being a part of this conversation with us. We understand that we're just two dudes from the St. Louis area and who don't really know a whole lot about a whole lot, right? We're trying to learn these things together. And with your help, we can, I think, make something actually come of this.
Yep. Cut.